The afternoon was soft and kind. Sunshine lay in a wide square on my living room rug, and tiny dust motes moved like slow snow in it. The kettle on the stove hummed in a gentle way, the sound you almost do not hear until you stop and listen. I had opened my old cedar wedding chest to air the quilts after a small roof leak, and the warm cedar smell rose up like a memory. I lifted folded linens and old pillowcases. My fingers traced lace my aunt had crocheted long ago. I reached under the bottom lining to smooth a ripple, and my nail caught a corner of something stiff. I pulled, careful and slow, and a sealed envelope came free, thin and tired from years of hiding. It was addressed in neat, slanted letters to my husband, Mr. Thomas Carter. The postmark said 1975. I felt my heart slow down and then rush at the same time. I whispered, "What could you have hidden from me, Tom?" I set the envelope on the kitchen table and stood beside it, my hand on the wood, my breath held without meaning to. Before I tell you what I found, I want to talk to you the way I wish someone had talked to me. I'm going to tell this slowly, like I wish someone had told me. And before I begin, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know, and tonight I could use the company. I carried the envelope to the window and held it up to the light, but I could not see through. The glue was still tight. The paper felt like a secret. I placed it by my husband's photograph on the mantel, the one where he is smiling and the corner of his eye is crinkled, and I asked the quiet room, "Why, Tom?" There is a journey in this letter, a truth locked away for 52 years, a love that was tested in the dark, and a family that would be changed by the light. I did not open it right away. I knew I had to start at the true beginning, the part where the quiet of my days started, and the part where the quiet of my heart began to hum again. So I put the kettle on a lower flame and sat down with my hands around my cup. I looked at the cedar chest. I watched the light move a little on the rug, and I began to remember the way you pick up a thread and follow it through a quilt, stitch by small stitch, until the pattern starts to make sense. I live in a small town where the mornings come in softly. The birds wake up before I do and talk in the maple tree outside my kitchen window. I put the kettle on every day the same way, and the small sound of it settling helps my bones feel steady. I like to open the curtains and let the light find its way across the kitchen table. After tea, I sweep the back porch and talk to the plants as if they were old friends who listen better than most people. I check the mailbox even when I am not expecting anything. I fold laundry with the radio on low. On Sundays, I wait for my son, Daniel, to call around noon. He always says, "Hi, Mom," in that same warm way he had when he was 8 and wanted a second helping of pie. I ask him about his week and he asks me if I am keeping warm. Sometimes his wife, Jenna, gets on the phone and tells me about the new recipe she tried. Sometimes my granddaughter, Mia, squeezes in and says, "Hi, Nana, I got an A on my paper." It is a simple life, and I am grateful for it. I have the small things I can count on. The kettle hum, the creak of the front steps, the way the sun hits the picture frames on the mantel and wakes up the faces there. Thomas watches me from that mantel every morning. The frame is a little nicked at the bottom from the time Mia knocked it with her backpack and said sorry 10 times. In the photo, he is young and strong, his hair dark, his tie slightly crooked. His smile is quiet, like the kind of smile you wear when you know your hands are good at holding what matters. Our house has not been full of noise for a long time, but it holds sound in its wood. It remembers the years when the children ran down the hall. It remembers the way Thomas's boots sounded when he came in for supper. It keeps those sounds like a song you hum when you are alone. Daniel and Jenna live 10 minutes away. They drop by with a bag of apples or with a jar of soup when the weather is cold. Mia often stays after school if Jenna has a late shift. She does her homework at the kitchen table and tells me little stories about her friends, and I nod and smile like I understand every word. My daughter Grace lives far away, 2 states over. We talk once a month on a long call that starts with laughs and ends with quiet. She tells me about her small apartment and the plant that keeps trying to die and then decides to live. She says, "I miss home," and I say, "Home is right here when you come." Thomas and I met when we were teenagers. It was at a church picnic, and there was a pie contest and a volleyball game and too much sun. He was shy with most people, but he was not shy with me. He said, "Would you like some lemonade?" And I said, "Yes," and he poured it like he had known me all his life. We were married in a small service with yellow flowers in jars. Aunt Lorraine, who had hands that could turn anything plain into something fine, gave us a cedar chest as a wedding gift. "For safekeeping," she said, patting the smooth lid. "Put what you want to keep close in here." I put folded linens in it, and the letter Thomas wrote me on our first anniversary. I put the lace handkerchief I carried on our wedding day. I put hopes in it, too, the kind you cannot see but you can feel when you lift the lid and breathe that wood. The chest sat at the foot of our bed for years, patient and still. We had our first baby in 1973. It was a girl. I had imagined her dark hair and her tiny fingers around mine. But the night I went to the hospital, everything changed in a way I could not hold. The room was bright and then dim. There were voices, but they were soft and far away. A nurse told me to breathe and then told me to rest. Later, another nurse came, and her face was kind, but it did not meet my eyes. They said the baby did not live. They said I needed to sleep. I remember a blanket corner in my hand, the rough weave of it between my fingers, and the way my palm was empty of anything warm and alive. I remember drifting and waking and drifting again. Thomas held my hand when they told me. He did not cry in front of me. He kept saying, "I'm here," in a low voice, like you say to someone on a small boat in a large lake. We went home, and the house was too quiet, even with the radio turned on. There was no grave to visit. There was only a stack of papers from the hospital and my body, which did not understand and kept aching for a child to hold. Thomas brought home a tiny oak sapling in a brown pot and said, "Let's plant it." We stood in the yard and dug a small hole. We put that little tree in the ground like we were giving it a job. "Grow," I said, with my hand on the soil. "Grow for her." We did not have a name to write on a stone. We had a living thing in our yard, and we watched it gain leaves. Time went on the way time does, slow and stubborn. 2 years later, we had our son, Daniel. He came into the world red and loud and very much alive. I was scared to sleep that first night, but he breathed soft and steady, and I learned to trust his small chest rising and falling. After Daniel, we had Grace. She came with a head of hair that stood up like a little crown. She had a small birthmark on her left shoulder that looked like a thumbprint. We counted fingers and toes and held them both in our arms and learned how to be a family again. We made a ritual of Sunday dinners. Thomas would set the table and tell jokes that made Daniel roll his eyes and then laugh anyway. Grace would put too much salt in the salad dressing and then pour it out and start again. When it rained, we turned on the porch light and listened to the drops hit the steps. Thomas was a steady man. He went to work and came home and fixed what was broken. He did not talk too much about feelings, but he did not need to. He would sit beside me on the couch and rest his hand on my knee, and that said enough. He had a soft spot for music from the radio, the kind with a simple chorus. Sometimes he would hum while he fixed a loose hinge. Sometimes he would dance with me in the kitchen, just a few steps, and then tip his head like he had done something brave. He was not perfect, but he was good. 12 years ago, Thomas got sick. It was a slow sickness, the kind that creeps in and takes small pieces first. We went to appointments and brought home new bottles with labels I could not pronounce. Through all of it, he kept his voice calm. "Me," he said near the end, "you'll be all right." I told him I did not know how to be all right without him. He patted my hand and gave me that small, steady smile. I still see it when I close my eyes at night. After he passed, the house learned a new quiet. I learned new ways to fill my days. I kept the cedar chest at the end of my bed, and sometimes I would sit on it when I missed him and feel the wood under me like a strong back. I did not look too deep into it. It was enough to know it was there. When the roof leaked last week, it was a small drip in the corner, but I could smell the change in the air. Damp wood smells different, like a word spoken in a different key. I set a bowl under the drip and called a man to look at it. He said he would come in a couple of days. I decided to open the cedar chest and take out the quilts to let them breathe in the sun. I carried them to the porch, one by one, and shook them out like flags of old countries. The cedar smell came up and wrapped around me. I kept a cloth over my shoulder to catch the dust. I was smoothing the bottom lining when my fingertip found that stiff edge. It startled me, the way a hidden step does. I lifted the lining just enough to see. The envelope was thin, the paper yellowing at the edges, but the seal was unbroken. I stood up and sat down again in the same motion. My heart felt careful. The front of the envelope said, "Mr. Thomas Carter," in handwriting I did not know. The postmark was 1975. I put my thumb over the date and felt the beat in my own skin. 1975 was 2 years after our first baby. 2 years after the oak sapling in our yard. 2 years after I had learned how to keep breathing while empty. I turned the envelope over and back again. I carried it like something fragile to the kitchen table. I put my glasses on. I held it at the corner and tried to see through, but it stayed quiet. My mind wanted to run ahead. My body wanted to sit still. I thought of Thomas's desk, the way he kept his tools in a line and his papers in tidy stacks. I thought of the places where he might have put a letter like this. I wondered why I had found it now, and why it had been hidden under the lining of our chest. I wondered if this was a piece he had meant to carry and did not. I looked toward the mantel at his picture. "What could you have hidden from me, Tom?" I asked again, but softer this time. The room did not answer me, but the kettle hummed and then clicked. I poured hot water into my cup and held it because my hands needed something to do. I did not open the envelope yet. I wanted to set my feet on the ground of this story before I walked any farther. I wanted to tell you about the way the mornings look in my kitchen and the way the oak tree has grown. I wanted to lay out the pieces of the past like folded linens on a bed so we could see them clearly together. Because this is not only the story of a letter. It is the story of a house that held love and held pain. It is the story of a man who was steady and a woman who tried to be. It is the story of a truth that slept and then woke up in the light on an ordinary afternoon. I picked up the envelope again when my hands steadied a little. The paper was worn smooth by time, and the edges had that soft feather look old paper gets. I set it down, then picked it up again, like it might speak if I held it just right. My fingers wanted to tremble, but I told them, "Be gentle now," like I was talking to a nervous bird. I slid a butter knife under the flap and worked it along slowly. The glue gave with a quiet sigh, and I felt almost sorry, the way you feel when you open something that has been waiting for so long. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice. The creases were sharp, like they had been made by careful hands. I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat and a little old-fashioned, with loops in the Y's and tails that dipped low. The date at the top said August 1975. I took a breath that felt like it came all the way up from my shoes. Then I began to read. "Dear Mr. Carter," it began. "My name is Margaret Lane. I was a nurse at St. Agnes Hospital at the time your wife, Mrs. Me Carter, delivered a baby in 1973. I am writing this alone from my small apartment because I do not know who else to tell. I am not proud of what I will write. I am ashamed. I am old now, and my body is ill, and if I do not say this before I go, I do not know if anyone will," it said. I stopped and looked at Thomas's photo on the mantel. His eyes were kind in that picture. I put the letter back on the table, lined up with the wood grain, and then picked it up again. "All right," I whispered, and my voice did not sound like mine. The letter went on. There was a physician, a Dr. Harold Whitaker, who organized private placements for newborns. The hospital knew his reputation as a man who helped unfortunate cases. "It is hard to explain the way people look away, Mr. Carter. I looked away for too long. On the night your wife delivered, she was given more sedation than I had ever been told to give. I questioned it and was told to follow orders," it said. I felt light in my head. The kitchen chair scraped the floor when I pulled it back. And the sound startled me because the house had been so quiet up to that moment. I sat down, the letter open in my hands like a fragile map. The kettle hummed as if it was still some other day. The letter continued. "Your baby girl was born alive. She cried. I heard her. I am so sorry to write that. I was present when Dr. Whitaker took her to the nursery and then to the office where the private placements were arranged. I was told there was a couple who had been waiting and had paid for expenses. I did not see money change hands. I saw a blanket and a note card with the code, Baby L73, written in black ink. It said. I closed my eyes. The words went straight through me, past flesh and bone, into a place that had been empty for more than 50 years. I put my palm flat on the table to steady myself. Somewhere in the house, the old clock ticked and did not stop. The letter did not spare me. I was told that the mother did not need to know that these arrangements were for everyone's good. I was afraid, but that is not an excuse. Dr. Whitaker implied that I could lose my job or worse if I caused trouble. I kept quiet. I did wrong. I have kept quiet for too long, it said. Tears started to gather, slow and hot. I smoothed the paper with the side of my hand and read on. I am retired now. I have no husband, no children. I have been ill. I think about things at night. I see the faces of the women. I think about your wife. I remember how small her hand looked on the sheet. I remember that she asked for the baby and was told to rest. I am writing to you because I heard your name when it was spoken at the desk, and I saw your face when you came down the hall. You were a steady man. I thought you might still be steady now, it said. I swallowed and took a sip of tea I did not remember pouring. The taste was flat and old in my mouth. My thumb brushed over the ink and left a faint smear where a drop had fallen. The letter listed details like a person trying to make up for lost time. The code was Baby L73, it said again. The blanket had a stitched tag, number Q4771, which I recorded that night in my own notebook in case there was ever a way to set things right. I overheard the name Waverly County in a whisper, and I saw a partial surname on a form before it was turned. More. I cannot be sure. I do not have copies of records. The clinic connected to these arrangements has since closed, it said. I read the next lines more slowly, as if they might break. If you cannot find proof, I beg you, protect your wife from more pain. If you can find proof, I beg your forgiveness. I am sorry. I tried to speak once and was told I could be sued and that it was my word against a doctor, it said. I am tired of being afraid. I would like to look God in the face one day and not turn away. She signed it, with regret, Nurse Margaret Lane, and then there was a small address at the bottom and the neat time of day. 11:20 p.m., I held the paper a long time after I finished. The words became a weight, but a steady one. I leaned back and felt the wood of the chair press into my shoulders. The house felt louder in its quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the settle of the floorboards and the soft shift of air through the vent. I reached down and touched the cedar chest with my fingertips, like it was a living thing. Why didn't you tell me? I asked the room, and in my mind I was asking Thomas. Oh, Tom, I said, the way you say someone's name when all you want is to rest your head on their shoulder. I pressed the letter to my chest and felt my heart beat against it. I read it again. I tried to remember the face of a nurse from that night, but it was a blur, a mix of white uniforms and soft shoes and the smell of antiseptic. I tried to remember if I had heard a cry, and if I did, had I dreamed it later or had it been real? I knew the feel of that blanket corner, rough between my fingers. I knew the emptiness after. When I could stand up, I did. I walked to the sink and splashed cool water on my face. Then I picked up the phone and called my neighbor and oldest friend. Eileen, I said when she answered. My voice cracked a little. Can you come over if you have time? I have time, she said. I'll bring tea. She always says it in that same gentle way, like tea can hold a person together. Maybe sometimes it can. Eileen came with a tin of tea and 2 clean cups wrapped in a towel. We sat at my kitchen table like we had sat 100 times. I slid the letter across to her. Read, I said, and my hands twisted the hem of my sweater without my permission. She read it slowly, mouthing some words, her brow drawing in. When she finished, she put her hand over mine. Me, she said. Oh, me. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked. My voice was small. I felt old in that moment and also very young. She was quiet a long time. The kettle hummed and she lifted it, poured the water, set it back down. I don't know the right thing yet, she said. But you're not alone. You never were, not then, not now. I keep thinking, I said, looking down at the wood grain. Why did Thomas tell me? Did he know? Did he try? Did he think it would hurt me more? Did he put the letter there and get scared? Eileen nodded. Maybe he meant to tell you and could not find the words, she said. Maybe he was trying to protect you in a clumsy way. People do their best, even when their best is not enough. I do not want to be angry at him, I whispered. He was good to me, he was steady. You don't have to be angry, she said. You can be sad, you can be brave, both can live in the same room. She paused and squeezed my hand. Tell Daniel soon and write everything down, dates, names, what this nurse wrote, your own memories even if they are foggy, put it all in one place. I nodded. You'll help me, I asked. I'll sit right here, she said. I'll make the tea, you write, then we'll see what the day brings. After she left, I pulled a notebook from the drawer where I keep stamps and rubber bands. On the first page, I wrote the date. I wrote, found letter addressed to Thomas, postmark 1975. I wrote Nurse Margaret Lane. I wrote the code Baby L73. I wrote Waverly County and more, and blanket Q4771. Watching the words land on paper made them solid. That night, I lay in bed with the letter on the table beside me, under the small lamp. The shadows moved on the ceiling. I closed my eyes and saw a hospital corridor that did not end, with doors that did not open. I saw a nurse with kind eyes who would not look at me straight on. I woke to the sound of my own breath and listened to it until it slowed down. In the morning, I knew where I would go. The library in town is small, but the women there know how to find things time tries to hide. I walked in and smelled that smell that lives in old books and wooden shelves. It made me feel a little stronger. Ms. Chu, I said at the desk. She looked up and smiled with her eyes. Me, she said. What can I do for you today? I'm looking for old newspapers, I said. From the late 1970s, early 1980s, anything about a doctor at St. Agnes Hospital. His name was Harold Whitaker. I swallowed. There may have been an investigation. Ms. Chu tilted her head. We have microfilm for that era, she said. Come with me, we'll see what we can see. She threaded the film into the machine with hands that were sure. We scrolled through headlines that felt like little windows in time. Church bake sale raises $45, one said. High school team goes to state, said another. Then, after a long while, there was a small headline with a heavy weight. Local physician surrenders license. Ms. Chu pointed. This one, she said. I leaned in, my heart in my throat. The article was from 1983. It said that Dr. Harold Whitaker had agreed to surrender his medical license after an informal review found record irregularities and incomplete documentation related to certain procedures and placements. There were no charges, no one named, no exact details. The doctor denied wrongdoing, said he was ready to retire. The next column mentioned a clinic by name, one I did not recognize, Haven Creek Clinic. Closed last year, the line said. Record sealed. There was a quote from a spokesperson about protecting privacy. There were no photos. There was no word that felt like justice there, only careful phrases that say nothing while saying everything. I felt a quiet anger then, not the hot kind. The kind that settles like a stone because it has nowhere to go. Ms. Chu made a copy for me and slid it across the desk. Do you want to sit for a minute? She asked. I'm all right, I said, and I half was and half was not. Thank you for your help. Let me know if you need more, she said. We have old city directories too. Sometimes names hide in those. I walked out into the sunshine and sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel. I looked at the paper on the seat beside me. The words, record irregularities, stared up at me like a shrug. I called Eileen and read her the headline. It's something, she said. It's not enough, but it's something. That evening I called Daniel. Can you and Jenna come by? I asked. I found something. I tried to keep my voice even. He could always hear my feelings in it. We'll be there in 15. He said. I smiled in spite of myself. He has his father's way of not wasting time when something needs doing. They came in the back door, because family does. Jenna set a bag of rolls on the counter because she cannot come empty-handed even when I tell her to. Daniel took one look at my face and sat down without being told. Mom, he said. I put the letter on the table and let him read it. He didn't speak at first. His brow pulled tight and then smoothed and then pulled tight again. Jenna read over his shoulder and put her hand on his back. When he finished, he looked up at me with a softness in his eyes that made me feel seen. "If there's a chance," he said, and his voice was steady, "we'll help you, we'll do whatever it takes." He reached across and took my hand in his. "We'll be careful, but we'll move." "I'm afraid to hope," I said. The words came out like a sigh I had been holding for years. "Hope can be sharp." Jenna nodded. "We can hold it together," she said. "All of us, we can make a plan. First, records. Second, DNA. Third, we see." "DNA," I said, the letters touching my mouth in a new way. "Like a home test," Daniel said. "It sometimes connects people with relatives. It's not perfect, but it can be a start. And I'll email the county records office in the morning about sealed files. I know a guy at the courthouse who might at least tell us what forms exist." We sat and wrote down the steps on a piece of paper. Daniel put his handwriting next to mine. It felt like we were building a small ladder out of words. Mia came in from the living room, where she had been pretending not to listen. "Can I help, Nana?" she asked. "I can set up the account for you online. It's easy." I smiled at her and smoothed her hair. "Yes," I said, "please." The next day, Daniel sent the email to the county. We received a reply 2 days later that was polite and heavy with nothing. It said that adoption records, including those arranged through private clinics, were sealed and could only be opened by court order. It explained privacy protections and the process for petitioning, which sounded like a road with many closed gates. It did not say no. It did not say yes. It said wait. Mia ordered a DNA kit from the company her friend had used to find a cousin. When the box came, she opened it with me like it was a small present with a big unknown inside. "You just spit in the tube," she said. "It's not very glamorous." We laughed a little, because you have to sometimes. We sat at the kitchen table and did what the directions said. It took more spit than I thought. I wrote my name on the label in careful print and sealed it just the way the picture showed. Mia filled in the online forms and linked my name to me like a tiny line drawn on a big, blank map. We put the box in the mailbox and watched the flag go up. Then we waited. Waiting can turn days into something else. I watered the plants and wiped the countertop twice when once was enough. I stood by the oak tree and laid my hand flat against the trunk. "We might find her," I said to the bark, quiet enough for just us to hear. A robin landed on a branch and cocked its head like it knew nothing and everything. The county sent another email with a list of forms and the address of a clerk's office I had never been to. Daniel said he would call in the morning and make sure it was the right place. We were moving, but slow, like pushing a heavy piece of furniture across a floor you do not want to scratch. One evening, after Eileen had gone home and the dishes were dry on the rack, I walked to Thomas's old desk. It sits in the corner of the spare room now, under the window that looks out at the maple tree. I opened the top drawer and found pens, old paper clips, a carpenter's pencil worn to a stub. I opened the next and found a small leather notebook with a rubber band around it. I sat on the bed and worked the band off. The pages were filled with neat, square writing, dates, names, phone numbers with area codes that were new in those days. On one page, underlined twice, were the words, Baby L73. Beside it was the number Q4771, the same as the blanket tag. Under that, Waverly County and the name Haven Creek Clinic, and then Dr. H. Whitaker and Nurse M. Lane, with a question mark. I turned the page and found copies of letters he had typed on thin paper, the kind that makes a soft sound when you move it. "To whom it may concern," one began. "I am seeking information about a birth on May 3, 1973 at St. Agnes Hospital. I have reason to believe there were irregularities in records. Please respond." A return address was our house. The stamp was a flag. Tucked behind the notebook were envelopes stamped "Return to Sender." The forwarded address was crossed out, and then crossed out again, and then stamped "No forwarding address." I counted 3 of them. My throat tightened. He had tried. I held the little book like a bird. "Oh, Tom," I said aloud, but in a voice that did not tremble. "You did try." The sharp part of my sadness softened just a little, the way snow softens when the sun finally touches it. I pressed the notebook to my heart and closed my eyes. I could almost hear his voice, low and steady. "I did what I could, me." I brought the notebook to the kitchen and set it next to the letter from Nurse Lane. I put them both in the cedar chest for the night, not to hide, but because it felt like the chest was a good steward of things that mattered. I wrote more notes in my own book. I looked at the calendar and circled a date 2 weeks out, because that was what the DNA company said the wait might be. The days grew into a rhythm of waiting. Morning light on the table. Afternoon shadows in the hall. The sound of the mail slot, which could mean anything or nothing. I made soup. I wrote down memories that rose up like bubbles in a pot, a lullaby I had hummed to no one in particular that week after we came home from the hospital. The way Thomas had stood extra close to me in the grocery store when we passed the diapers aisle. The day we planted the oak when the earth was still cold under the top layer. Eileen came by often. "We are on a long road," she said as she set down the tea. "We will walk it one step at a time." I nodded. We did not talk about the end. We talked about the next step. We talked about what to do with our hands while we waited. I baked bread. She mended a tear in my good tablecloth with stitches so small you could barely see them. It felt like a prayer. The email came on a Wednesday morning when the sky was clear and thin. I was in my robe with the blue flowers on it, and the kettle had just clicked off by itself. The subject line said, "Your DNA results are ready." My hands went cold and then warm. I stood very still. I sat down at the kitchen table where I had sat through so many mornings and typed in my password. My breath felt loud in my ears. The page loaded and showed a lot of colors and lines I did not understand at first. Then, in the middle in bold letters, it said, "Close family, parent-child match." My eyes went to the name beside those words. Rose Moore. The age listed was 52. The location was the next county over. My hand found the table without looking, and my palm pressed down flat. I could hear the kettle ticking as it cooled. In that small sound, I felt the world tip and then come back level again. I closed my eyes and let air in and out slow. I thought of the oak tree, the day we planted it, and the way the roots must have moved in the dark earth without us seeing. I thought of the way truth can be like that, hidden and growing until one day it breaks into the light. I called Eileen. The phone barely rang before she answered. "Well," she said, like she already knew the answer and was afraid of it. "There is a match," I said. "It says parent-child. Her name is Rose Moore. She lives close." Eileen let out a breath that sounded like a prayer. "Oh, me," she said. "Oh, my." She was quiet a moment. "Are you all right?" "I do not know what I am," I said, but I smiled when I said it, and I felt the smile. "I'm sitting. My hand is on the table. The kettle is doing that little noise it does." "Good," she said. "Stay sitting. Put both feet on the floor. Drink water. Then, when you are ready, write her a message." I drank water. My hands found a pen and fiddled with it while I thought of what to write. Easy, honest, gentle. Those words came to me like stepping stones. I wrote a message in the little box on the screen. "Hello, Rose," I typed. "My name is me. I am 74 and live in Maple Glen. Our DNA results say we are close family. I do not want to cause you any distress. I believe I may be your mother. If you would be open to a message or a call, I am here. I will go at your pace," I wrote. I read it 3 times and then hit send. Then I waited again, but it was a different kind of waiting. I watered the plants because I did not know what else to do with my hands. I stood by the oak tree and put my hand on the bark and said, "We might be close to the end of one journey and the beginning of another." The robin was not there that day. A breeze moved the leaves like someone whispering a blessing. 2 days passed. In those days, time stretched and snapped back like a rubber band. I checked my email more than I should have. I made soup and did not taste it. I folded a towel twice. On the 3rd day, a small bell sound came from the computer. There was a new message. It began, "Hello, me." I sat down before I read the rest. "I am Rose. I have always known I was adopted. I was told I was found on church steps. I have wondered a long time. Your message surprised me, but it does not feel wrong. I am open to talking slowly. Perhaps a phone call first. Kindly, Rose," it said. I put my hand over my mouth, and then I laughed, a small, happy sound that surprised me. It felt like something tight had loosened in my chest. I wrote back, "Thank you, Rose. Yes, a call. I will wait for your time. I am patient." We set a time for the evening, when the day is softer and the world's noise is less. I spent the hours before our call moving around the house with no real purpose. I straightened a stack of magazines. I wiped down the counter even though it was clean. I took Thomas's photo down from the mantel and held it for a minute and then put it back. "We are close now," I said to the picture. "Stay with me." When the phone rang, I let it ring twice so I would not sound too eager. I picked it up and said, "Hello," and heard my own voice shake and settle. "Hello," she said. Her voice was warm and careful. She sounded like someone who knows how to be gentle with people. "This is Rose." "Rose," I said. I let her name sit in my mouth. "Thank you for calling." There was a small pause, the kind of pause where two people look at the same moon from two different places. "I am not sure where to start," she said. We both laughed softly at the same time, and that made the first piece easier. "Me either," I said. "Maybe we just say small things. My name is me. I live in Maple Glen. I like making soup more than eating it." She laughed again. "My name is Rose," she said. "I live in the next county. I have a small garden I talk to. I love the smell after rain." "Me too," I said, before I could stop myself. And then we both were quiet, like we had stepped into the same small stream and felt the same cool water. We talked about the weather like strangers do when they are trying not to fall apart. We talked about the maple trees starting to show a hint of red at the edges. We talked about tea. We did not talk about the hospital yet. We waited for the words to arrive on their own. She told me about the people who raised her. "My mother, Anna, was a teacher," she said. "My father, Paul, worked at the post office. They were good to me. My mother passed 10 years ago, my father last winter. He left me a letter," she added, and her voice changed a little, softer, deeper. "We can talk about that later if you want." "We will when you are ready," I said. "I am glad they loved you well." I meant it. There is room in the heart for more than one kind of gratitude. "I was told I was found on church steps," she said. "At St. Luke, in the city. That always felt like a story someone else had written and I was asked to read out loud. It did not fit how my life felt, but I held it because it was all I had." "I was told you had died," I said, and the words were simple and terrible. "I planted a tree for you." There was a long, tender pause, the kind that feels like a hand being held across a table. "What kind of tree?" she asked. "An oak," I said. "It is very tall now." We both breathed then, the way people breathe when they are trying not to cry because crying could make the whole room tilt. I noticed something about the way she breathed. She took a small breath before she answered, just like I do when I am careful with my words. It is a small thing to share with someone, but it felt like a thread. "I do not want to rush you," I said. "Would you like to meet? Not today, when you are ready, somewhere simple, a park." "Yes," she said. It came out steady. "A park would be good. There is one near me with good benches and shade. Late afternoon, the light is kind then." "Kind light is best," I said. We settled on Saturday. We picked the park by the small pond where ducks make lazy circles. We said goodbye with a promise to keep it gentle. On Saturday, I got dressed slowly. I chose a soft blue cardigan and a skirt that did not itch when I sat. I put a comb through my hair and left it the way it fell. I slipped Thomas's photo into my purse, and the letter from Nurse Lane, and the little notebook where I had written everything down. I also put 3 photos, one of me and Thomas on our wedding day, one of Daniel and Grace when they were small, in their Sunday clothes, and one of the oak tree with snow on its branches. I arrived early and sat on a bench with a view of the pond. Birds stitched sounds into the air. A child laughed somewhere behind me. The light was just as she had said, kind, leaning toward golden. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. I saw her walking toward me before she saw me. She had a careful walk, like someone who does not want to hurry but also does not want to be late. She wore a simple dress and a sweater with sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her hair was the color of wheat before it turns, with threads of gray. When she lifted her head, I saw the shape of her mouth, and my heart turned over because there it was, my own smile, but new. She stopped a few steps away. "Me?" she asked, though she already knew. "Rose," I said. I stood. We did not rush into an embrace. We stood close enough to feel the other's breath in the afternoon air. And then, because it felt right, we reached out and our fingers touched. It was warm. It was steady. The world did not tilt. It softened. We sat down. For a moment, we just looked at each other. People talk about seeing themselves in someone else's face, but for me, it was more than a line of a jaw or a color of an eye. It was the way she tipped her head before she spoke. It was the way her hands rested, palms down, on her knees for a second before she folded them. "I brought some photos," I said. My voice was softer than I meant it to be. "So did I," she said, and we both smiled at the same time again, like a small bell ringing. I pulled out the wedding picture first. "This is me and Thomas," I said. "He was your father." I watched her face as she took in the photo. It was a different kind of seeing, not longing exactly, but recognition that you have found a piece of a puzzle that you were not sure was missing. "He looks kind," she said. Her thumb touched the corner of the picture where the white border had a nick. "He was," I said. "He was steady." She handed me a photo of herself as a baby, propped on a blanket, eyes wide and curious. "This is me," she said, and we both laughed because when else would a sentence like that be both true and new? The blanket had a tiny tag, just visible at the edge. I leaned in without thinking, the way you lean toward something that calls you. "I also brought this," she said, and she reached into her bag and pulled out a small locket on a thin chain. It was oval and plain, the kind of locket that holds a small secret. "My mother gave it to me when I was 16, she said. "She said someone left it with me, she didn't know who. I wore it sometimes and sometimes forgot about it, but I never got rid of it." "May I asked. She nodded. I opened it with my thumbnail. Inside was a tiny piece of paper pressed very thin, a little brown with time. There was a faint letter written on it, just the curve of an M. It could have been anything. It felt like something. I put the locket back in her hand. "It's pretty," I said. "It's yours." She nodded and slipped it back into her bag with the care of someone returning a small bird to its nest. Then she took out a folded sheet of paper and smoothed it on her knee. "This is the letter my father left me," she said. "It explains what he knew. Would you like me to read some?" "Only if you want to," I said. "I am here." I folded my hands in my lap again and steadied my breath. She read, "My dear Rose," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone from this world, and I hope you have love holding you up. I want to tell you what we were told the night we brought you home. We were called by a man who said there was a private adoption arranged through a doctor. He spoke of fees to cover medical costs and legal papers that would come later. We were told that a young mother could not keep you and wanted you to be with a family. We did not ask the questions we should have asked. We believed what we were told. We paid the fee. We brought you home and loved you the best we could. Years later, I learned the doctor was under investigation for irregularities. I did not know if that meant you were stolen or not. We did not know. I have asked forgiveness in my prayers many times. I hope one day you will know the truth. I hope you will forgive me," it said. She stopped there and folded the paper again, slower this time. We did not speak for a while. The pond made its small pond sounds, and a duck frisked its feathers. I thought of the man who had signed that letter. I did not know his face. I knew his heart had tried to turn toward truth. "Thank you for reading that," I said. "I am glad he wrote it down. It means he loved you enough to face hard things." "I think he did," she said. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was calm. "I think my mother did too. She made me soup when I was sick. She taught me to read under the covers with a flashlight. She said I was found on church steps. Maybe that story helped her sleep." "I don't want to hate anyone," I said. "My anger would have no place to go. It would throw itself against walls." I shook my head slightly. "I want to tell you everything I know. It is not much, but it is honest." I told her about the letter from the nurse. I told her about the code Baby L73 and the blanket tag. I told her about the words Waverly County and the partial name. I told her about the oak tree. I did not tell it like a storm. I told it like the weather the day after a storm, a list of what remains and what grew and what was lost. She listened with her whole face. When I finished, she reached out and touched my hand again. "I am here," she said. "I was here all this time. I didn't know, but I was." I nodded and squeezed her fingers softly. "You were," I said. "You are." I felt both young and old again, like the first time I held Daniel. like the first time I let Grace walk from one couch to the other with her hands out and her small feet brave. This was a new kind of holding. We did not make big plans then. We did not rush into names like mother and daughter as if we could claim them back with one meeting. We agreed to meet again. We agreed to move slow. We agreed to tell the truth and let it be enough for a while. Before we stood to leave, she spoke. "Would you like to see where I live?" she asked. "Not today, another day." "I would," I said. "And one day, when you are ready, you can meet Daniel and Grace if you want." "I would like that," she said, and there was that same soft pause we both keep between words when the next one matters. "I have a feeling I say things the way you do," she added, and we both smiled, because by then we knew it was true. We walked back to the parking lot together, not touching but close enough to feel the same small breeze. The late afternoon light rested on the tops of the trees, and the shadows were long and kind. At the cars, we turned and looked at each other again like we were setting each other in our minds in a way that would last. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. "I'll be here," I said. We hugged then, just once, not too tight. It was the kind of hug you give when you are not sure if your body can hold all your feelings. It can. The body knows. When I drove home, I took the long way, past quiet streets with porches and laundry lines and a boy on a bicycle with a squeaking wheel. I talked to Thomas as I turned the corners. "Her name is Rose," I said out loud. "She has your pause before she speaks. She has my way of looking at the light." At home, I walked to the oak tree and laid my palm flat against it. The bark was rough and cool. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The tree and I stood there together as the sky moved toward evening and the first thin star appeared above the roofline. I closed my eyes and breathed in and out, and for the first time in a very long time, hope did not feel sharp. It felt like a soft hand at my back, guiding me forward. The day after we met at the park, I woke up with a new kind of quiet inside me. It wasn't empty. It was wide and still. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter from Nurse Lane and the notebook Thomas had kept, and I looked at them the way you look at a small pile of stones you picked up at a river. You turn them over in your hand and feel how smooth they've become from time and water. What should I do with the truth I now held? I could feel Daniel wanting to move, to write letters, to call offices, to push on doors. I could feel part of me wanting to do that too, but I also felt the years like a long stretch of road behind me. The doctor was gone. Nurse Margaret was gone. The clinic was closed. The paper trail felt like old ash that blows away when you try to grab it. I called Eileen and asked her to come by. When she came, she took her usual chair and poured the tea. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I am thinking I want to be careful," I said. "I want peace, not punishment. I don't know if a court can give me what I need. I don't know if it would give Rose what she needs. I don't know if it would give the dead anything they did not already have." She nodded. "We can still lay down what we found," she said. "We can still tell the truth out loud. Sometimes that is enough." Later, Daniel came by on his lunch break. He stood with his hand on the back of the chair. "I talked to a friend," he said, and his voice was gentle. "To open anything old like this, we'd need a lot. It could take years. It might go nowhere. It could pull you through every step again." "I know," I said. "I can feel that. I don't want to spend the time I have left asking cold rooms to be kind. I would rather sit at a warm table with my family. I would rather hold Rose's hand and watch Mia eat too much bread." He smiled. "And I saw the boy he had been in the man he is. Then that's what we'll do," he said. "We'll help you hold peace." "Thank you," I said. "It doesn't mean we say it was all right. It means we choose what we carry." He squeezed my shoulder. "I understand," he said. "I'll stand with you." I still had one more thing I needed to do. I needed to tell Grace. I called her and asked if she could do a video call that evening. "Is everything okay, Mom?" she asked. "Yes and no," I said. "It's something that needs your face." When the screen lit up, her face filled my little world. Her hair was tucked behind one ear. She had that way of tilting her head to listen that she had even as a child. "Hi, Mom," she said. "You look different." "I feel different," I said. "Grace, I found a letter." I took a breath and told her everything, slow and steady. I told her about Nurse Lane. I told her about the code and the tag and the county. I told her about the DNA and about Rose and about the park and the bench and the locket with the faint curve of an M. She listened with her hands over her mouth, eyes wet and wide. I watched her look around the room like she needed a second to make space inside herself for what I was saying. "Oh," she said at last, soft and long. "Oh, Mom." "I don't want to hurt you with this," I said. "I don't want to take anything from you. I only want to tell the truth." She shook her head, and her hair fell forward and she pushed it back with the heel of her hand. "You're not hurting me," she said. "You're giving me a sister. You're giving me the truth. How could I be mad at that?" She wiped her eyes and then she smiled, and the smile pushed the tears right to the edge. "I'll book a flight," she said, sure and bright. "I want to meet my sister." I put my hand to the screen like you do when you want to touch someone and you cannot. "All right," I said. "Come home." We planned a small dinner for the weekend, when Grace could be here. We did not make it fancy. We made it gentle. I pulled out my big pot and started a stew in the morning, browning the meat, adding onions that softened and went sweet, laying in carrots and potatoes. The smell filled the house and took me back to 100 Sunday dinners that held us when nothing else could. Jenna brought loaves of bread and warmed them low in the oven. She rubbed the crust with a bit of butter so it would shine. Daniel turned the radio to the station that plays simple songs without too much talk. Mia set the table and asked if she could put flowers on it. "Yes," I said. "Something small." She came back from the yard with a little white rose in a juice glass. She set it down like a candle. "For the ones who couldn't be here," she said softly. Daniel added a chair at the end of the table. He set a fork and a napkin and a plate at that empty spot. He looked at me and I looked at him. "For Dad," he said. "For Dad," I echoed, and my voice did not shake. Grace arrived with her bag and threw her arms around me in the doorway. She cried a little right into my shoulder and then laughed. "I'm here," she said. "I'm ready." Rose arrived right on time. She stood in the doorway and took a breath like she was stepping into a new room in her own house. We had hugged before in the park, but this was our house. The hall with the pictures of the children at different ages, the smell of stew and warm bread, the radio low, the white rose on the table. For a moment we were awkward, everyone was. How do you begin to be family with a stranger? You start small. You say names. "Rose," I said. "Me," she said. "Come in," I said, and I reached for her coat. "This is Daniel," I added, "and this is Grace." "Hi," Daniel said, and his voice was steady, the kind you can lean on. He held out his hand and then changed his mind and gave her a gentle hug. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too," she said, and her eyes shone in a way that made me think of sunlight on water. Grace stepped forward and hugged her, not too tight. "I'm your little sister," she said, and then laughed in a small, surprised way. "I've always wanted to say that." "I'm your older sister," Rose said, and the words sounded new and natural at the same time. "I've always wanted to say that too, without knowing it." We sat down. The stew was thick and the bread was warm. We passed bowls and said please, and thank you, and take some more, because that is the language families speak when they are afraid of bigger words. The radio played a song I knew by heart, and I hummed without thinking, and then I heard Rose humming too, a breath behind me. Mia hovered near the doorway, shy and curious, then took her seat. "I'm Mia," she said, as if they did not all know already. "I'm glad you're here. Do you like apple pie?" It was such a Mia question that we all smiled. "Yes," Rose said. "I like it with cheddar," she added, and Mia gasped because that is how we eat it. "Me too," Mia said, delighted. "Dad says it's wrong. He eats it without." "Dad is stubborn," Grace said lightly, and Daniel nodded and reached for more bread, and we all laughed, and the laughter untied a little knot inside the room. He did not tell the whole story all at once. We poured it like tea, a little at a time, careful not to spill. Rose told us about her first bicycle and how her father ran beside her until he could not keep up. She told us about her mother's habit of tucking notes into lunch bags, little drawings of suns and birds. Daniel told her about the summer he broke his arm falling out of the maple tree. Grace told her about the dog we had when she was little, a muddy mutt who slept under the table. Rose reached into her bag and brought out the locket. She held it out to show Mia, who peered at it like it was a tiny moon. "It was given to me when I was 16, Rose said. "I didn't know why I kept it, I just did." "It's pretty," Mia said, and then looked up, serious in a way that made her look older. "You can keep it. You don't have to know why." "I think I do know why now," Rose said softly, "but I'll still keep it." We took a break from the table and moved to the living room. I had put old photos in a basket by the couch so they could be passed around without ceremony. We sat close, but not too close. I handed Rose the picture of Thomas at our wedding, and she touched the edge and looked a long time. "I wish he was here," she said. "He is," Grace said, and she tilted her head toward the extra chair at the table. "In the ways that matter." Jenna brought out apple pie, and yes, there was cheddar, sliced thin and sharp. We ate and laughed when the cheese slid off the pie onto someone's lap. I watched Rose watch us, and I saw her shoulders loosen a little, like a person who has been holding her breath without knowing it and finally lets it go. After dinner, when the light moved toward late afternoon, we walked to the yard and stood around the oak tree. The air had the first hint of cool in it. The tree was so big now that the four of us, me, Rose, Daniel, and Grace, could not wrap our arms all the way around it if we tried. "This is where I came when I missed you," I said to Rose. My hand found the rough bark by instinct. "We planted this when I had no place to go with my grief." She stood close to me, and the others stood on either side. The branches made a roof above us, and the leaves moved in a slow, kind way. I traced the trunk, roughness with my fingers, and let my palm rest there. "Here you are," I said, the words coming from somewhere deep. "Here you've been all along in a way." We stood there without speaking for a while. Daniel reached out and touched the bark too. Grace leaned her head against the trunk. Rose closed her eyes. I do not know what they said inside themselves. I do know my heart found a place to sit down. The next day, I sat at the kitchen table and took out a sheet of paper and a pen. I wrote "Dear Tom" at the top and let my hand be slow. I told him about the letter and the notebook I had found. I told him about the DNA and the name that had appeared on the screen. I told him about the park and the bench and the ducks and the way the light had been kind. I wrote the words I had been carrying in my chest since the moment I saw my girl's name. "You tried," I wrote. "I found her. We're all right, Tom." I folded the letter and put it in an envelope and wrote his name on the front the way Nurse Lane had, neat and sure. Then I drove to the cemetery where he is, under a stone that has his name and the dates and a little line about kindness. The sky was pale. The ground was firm. I sat down on the small bench with the metal arm that is always cold even in summer. I read the letter out loud. My voice did not shake much. When I finished, I set the envelope on the stone and put a small rock on it so it would not blow away before the dew had a chance to soften the paper. "We're all right," I said again, and I felt it ring true in the hollow places. I rested my hand on his name and closed my eyes and thanked him for his steady and for his trying. When I got home, I felt a pull toward one more small piece of this story. I looked up Nurse Lane's name. Eileen helped me with the computer. We found an obituary from years ago with a small picture of a woman with thoughtful eyes. It listed a niece in another town. There was an address for condolences. I wrote a short note. "Dear family of Margaret Lane," I began. "I believe Margaret wrote my husband a letter many years ago to tell a hard truth. I want you to know I forgive her. I hope she found peace." I did not write more than that. I didn't have to. I addressed the envelope and sealed it and put a stamp on it. Then I set it by the door for the mail. A week later, after the note had gone out, Eileen and I drove to a small cemetery on the other side of town. It was quiet there, like cemeteries are. We walked the rows and read names, and we found hers under a lilac bush that still had a few dry blossoms clinging to it. I had brought a single white flower, plain and small. I laid it down without a word. Eileen stood beside me and held my hand. We did not stay long. We did not take anything away. We only left that flower and a silence that felt like a blessing more than a gap. On the way back to the car, a breeze moved through the trees and made the dry blossoms shake just enough to sound like a soft clapping far away. At home, I did one last thing. I opened the cedar chest, and the smell of wood and years rose up like a hand. I placed the old letter from Nurse Lane inside, flat and sure. I placed a copy of the note I had written to Tom, the one I had read at his grave. I added a photo of Rose at the park, laughing, the locket a small light against her throat. I added a photo from our dinner, with Daniel reaching for the bread and Grace's hand half lifted in the air like she was about to tell us something she just remembered, and Rose's eyes shining. I tied a ribbon around the stack of papers and pictures. I did not tie it tight. I tied it the way you tie a present you plan to open again. I did not do it to hide. I did it to keep safe. I lowered the lid and rested my hands on the wood. It felt like a door and a table both, closing and holding. That evening, Rose called. "I was thinking," she said. "Would you like to come to the farmer's market with me on Saturday? We could buy too many tomatoes and complain about carrying them." "I would like that very much," I said. We both laughed, and I could see us there already in the bright morning, carrying too many tomatoes, smiling at nothing and everything. Later, sitting by the window, I watched the light go warm along the floor and the dust drift like slow snow. The house held the day's sounds. The radio hummed. The kettle sighed. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then decided whatever it was could wait. I thought about how a house can learn new songs after years of the same old ones. In the living room on the mantel, Thomas's photo watched me with that steady smile. I looked back. "We're all right," I said again, and this time there was room in the words for everything. The sadness, the regret, the long years, the small glories, the sound of soup boiling, the touch of a hand, the rough bark of a tree, the curve of an M in a locket. There was room in the words for me. I have been thinking about secrets, how they strain under the weight of years, how they sit quiet in dark corners and then creak when someone walks by, how the truth, when it comes, is not a storm that smashes everything. Sometimes it arrives like morning, slow and sure, and the light shows what was always there. Love waited in our house. It did not spoil. It did not turn hard and mean. It sat like bread dough covered with a towel, rising without anyone seeing, and then one day you lift the cloth and you find it big and ready. We made space at our table where pain once lived. We set an extra chair. We put a white rose in a glass. We passed stew and stories. We laughed and cried and did not try to decide which was better. I know not every story like mine ends with a voice on the other end of the phone that says yes. I know not every person gets a bench in a park under kind light. Some truths take longer. Some truths stay in their envelopes, still sealed. If that is you, I am holding your hand from here. I am saying you are not alone. I am saying that even without an answer, your love does not vanish. It hums. It rises. It holds. If you are listening right now, thank you for sitting with me in this. Thank you for holding this story with soft hands and a quiet heart. It makes the room feel warmer to have you in it. It makes the night feel less wide. If you can, share the stories in your family while you can. Ask kind questions. Keep small records. Write down names and dates even if you think you will never forget them. Fold up letters and tuck them where someone can find them later if they need to. Forgive when forgiveness arrives at your door. It may not come in a blaze. It may come in the shape of a woman with a gentle voice and a locket in her pocket. Open the door anyway. If you are still waiting for your own truth to come home, I will keep a small light on for you in my heart. If you want to, tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what you are waiting for. I read every note. I say a little prayer over each one. I don't need to know all the details to stand with you. We are here together in this little space, holding on with steady hands. The kettle is humming. The radio is low. The oak tree outside is moving just enough to make a leaf flicker. The cedar chest is closed, but it is not locked. Nothing is locked anymore. I will say good night now. May your house be gentle to you. May your memories hum and not shout. May the morning bring you a quiet truth. And may you have someone to sit with you, even if it's only a voice from a small speaker in a quiet room, saying, "I'm here. We're all right."